real fast. All right, guys, welcome. Let's talk about, I'm going to do a demo for you in 2-point perspective. We're going to talk about some do's and don'ts as a quick review from what we just mentioned in our last class. Okay, so let me just back up here a couple steps. And let's see. Why is it not backing up? There we go. Okay, so do's and don'ts of when we're working. So one of the most common mistakes that I showed you guys in the last class is artist students will tend to frame up a frame like so. And the problem with doing this is that basically any of the buildings or anything that they're drawing, since both vanishing points are in the middle right here, they're getting a high level of what I call, it's basically convergence, but it's like a fan effect, okay? And so what ends up happening is you sort of split your composition down the middle, and then people tend to come in here, and that just feels like a good general size, and they're like, okay, building number one, but then you don't really get anything over in these edges, and this is what I call like dead corners, where you have these dead triangles in the corner, and it affects your design sensibilities, okay? So, hold on, why is the mouse not working? Where'd it go? There it is. So the thing that we want to do, okay, is we want to make sure that whenever you have your vanishing points, we just come in here and you just want to, and you can work like this. If you want to draw this on like 2 pieces of paper that's like 8.5 by 11 and then just draw on top of it, you could do that. Or you could just Xerox it and then you have it sort of ready to go. But you could just make a rough grid like this and then just come over here and throw down a frame and start drawing and designing around part of that frame. Okay, so if I did that right now, and if I said, hey, there's my frame, I'm guaranteed to be a whole lot more successful because now my vanishing points are outside of my picture plane and there's no real issues or concerns that I have. I'm not going to get that fanning effect. Now, for some of you, there's nothing wrong with doing this. I did this for a long time. As you're drawing right now, if you want to have your vanishing points there, but you can't see them and you don't want to do the line, what you can do is take a couple Post-its or half of another piece of paper and just extend your paper like this and just tape it on the corner right here. Okay, just put a piece of tape. Then you have a VP there. And I've done it before. I've had to do like a 4-fielded pan before, and I have like 3 sheets of paper tapped on. That way I can make sure I'm going exactly to my vanishing point. That can be a little excessive, but it just depends on the perspective problem that you're trying to work out. So on this, I could easily extend another piece of paper, and again, tape it on the back side right here underneath, and I could have another vanishing point that goes off the paper. So that's one way that I showed you that I just wanted to mention right now that you can do. Another option that you can do, see if I can go back and get this off, is that you can come back here and we talked about making a little measuring line going down like so. And basically, you come back and only one time, you have to go to your vanishing point and you could come in here and you could find the angle of these lines receding and you just draw them on your measuring line like so. So whenever I get into my drawing, I just have to make sure that my ruler is hooking up and matching these lines right here. Okay? So now, let's say that I want to come in here and I'm going to start to draw a building right now, right in there. Zoom in for a second too. Okay? I could just come over here and I could just look at this particular angle that I have, and I just have to make sure, like, hey, if that's where my building is, that's the ground, is that angle matching up right in here? And you can see that it is. Okay? But if you come back to draw and you start doing something like this, there's a problem because that angle that's right in here is at a totally different angle as to what the convergence angle is for that real vanishing point, right? And that's key. You have to remember that. Always go back and sort of check your lines. Even if you think it might be working better than what you have, that's not necessarily the case. Okay, hold on a minute there. I just did something. Okay, that was easy. All right, you go back and take a couple of those off here. All right, so I can do the same thing for this side too. Right, I can come back here and I can pretty much mark up these lines right here. And you know, you can do them in red or a different color if you like. That's a little bit easier for your eye to see sometimes. But once I get those set up there, I can go back in and draw. Now, I have my grid on a lower level in Photoshop here. I like to drop my grid down a little bit because right now it's like super blue. And I don't need it to be super blue. I just need it to be really light there so I have a good idea in terms of the perspective that's happening. And then I come back up on top. Let's say since I'm zooming into this, I'm going to go ahead and mark my little angles in here, going off of my vanishing point. And the cool thing is you only have to do this once. And I mentioned before, when you're using a Cintiq, you can use one of these rulers on it, these plastic rulers. Do not use a metal ruler on a Cintiq. You'll scratch up the surface. These won't scratch, and sometimes if yours gets old and dirty like mine, it's a little bit dirty, I need to clean it, right? But it sticks to the front because it gets like a little bit of static electricity in it. It sort of just stays there, and it doesn't quite drop off, which is sort of neat. Not that it's like nasty dirty, like it's been in the back of, like my dogs have been sitting on it or something.
Your folks have been playing with it.
Yeah, they've been like scratching on it, and there's flea residue. And just kidding. I wanted to gross you out real quick. So look, I could come in here real quick and just get those other lines in there. And if you want, there's nothing wrong with coming back, and you can pick a lighter color. Whatever helps you to think. You guys, each of you know your strengths and weaknesses as individuals. So, if you want to draw a couple of trace lines coming off a couple of those, that's totally fine. Get your trace lines in there and make sure everything's matching up. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is I start to draw in here and design. We also talked about placement of horizon line in the last class lecture. Okay, up high, in the middle, down low. I'm going to stay safe right now, and I'm just going to draw it right. I'm going to keep it where I have it right in the middle. Now, if I wanted to, not to be really tricky, but technically, this is how you guys need to start thinking a little bit. This is why I love Photoshop, so I can do stuff like this really fast, all right? Give me a second here. Uh-oh. Sorry. 1 second. Let me go back up here and get this to that. I like this blue because when I was in the industry, we would draw with blue color erase pencils all the time, and I still like those pencils. I think color erase are some really fantastic sketching pencils. See, look at that magic right there. See that? Uh-oh. But the ruler stays right up. It's really convenient. So here's the difference. It's just this easy. I could take that box right here, and you can see if I raise that up super high, my horizon line's really low, so I'm going to be sort of looking up at things. And if I grab that frame right now, let me hide the ants. Different commands on here. And if I bring that frame down low like this, I'm going to be looking down on stuff because my horizon line is really, really high right there. So I'm just going to leave it right here in the middle, but remember that. We did talk about that in the last lecture, and those are sort of pros and cons that you need to think about. And that's going to dictate part of your environment. Now, since this environment happens to be hold on, let's get that layer back. Since this environment that we're about to start working on is an exterior shot, and I'm looking around a bunch of buildings, having it in the middle here isn't a bad thing, so I can go either way. It's all going to start depending on the scale of like the first building that I draw. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing in this as we did in the 1-point perspective, where I'm going to be considerate thinking about foreground, midground, and background, and I'm going to design part of my environment around that. So first step that I want to do here is I'm going to come in here, make sure I got a clean layer, and I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to start sketching, thinking about buildings that I might have in the foreground, and the best way to do that is to sort of just build up from the floor. So I could just come over here, and I might just sketch a little area like right in here. Let me recede that back to the other VP. Okay, and this is going to be sort of like my first shape. Uh-oh, hold on a minute. I don't know why my computer keeps, you know what, hold on. Is the touch on or off? There it goes. Let me make sure that's off. Don't ever buy Cintiq with the touch. It's sort of a wasteless feature. I hardly use it. Now my grid I threw in there, it's a teeny bit off because I just roughed it out really quick, and that's totally fine for me right now. My goal is just to come in here and start just mapping out some buildings, and I always start with just a sketch on the ground. In fact, if I want to, that's why it keeps doing that, is I have that. Hold on a minute, guys. I have someone else's workspace in here, and that's why it keeps messing up. Let's just go to painting workspace. Aha. Now that stuff's gone, and then I could come over here, close all this down, and then just go to the layer icon. That's what I want. Much easier. And then, sorry, I won't jump like that again. I can bring this back and we'll be fine. There we go. Sorry about that delay. So for some reason, one of the other classes that uses this machine, there was a different workspace set, so I put it back on painting here, so I didn't have that scroll feature down below or have to worry about touching anything. Okay, so back to this. So as I start to sketch in here now and start to develop this environment, let me close this. Okay. I just like to start from the ground plane up. So I could come over here. I'm thinking about having a street, and then somewhere over here on the right-hand side composition, I'm going to have like a factory. So I'm just going to come in here right now, and I'm going to sketch my factory. I'm going to see if I can't make this to be like one of the larger shapes inside my composition. Okay? So that's going to be right there. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to recede this back. Okay? And I decided to crop right there, but I might adjust that a little bit later, right? We talked about reframing in our composition all the time. So I drew from there. Let me just real quick, I want to sketch in sort of a little bit of the ground plane because that's just the way I like to work. It helps me think about how my shapes are existing, what is in front or behind another shape, and I find this a really valuable way to get drawings to be very accurate very quickly. So there's sort of my warehouse. And I thought about having a neighborhood of other houses around it, okay? So if that's my warehouse, that's got to be pretty good in scale, and so I might have some buildings or lighthouses around it. Let me come up here. I have something in my foreground that I was starting to develop, and I might ditch the ruler in a second, because whenever I tend to do this at home, I think I draw a little bit faster when I'm just knocking stuff out. So, and I'm also talking a lot when I have to do these. Okay, so let's come over here now. I want to have like a street back here. It starts about right here, and the street's going to recede back this way. The street might duck and turn like this. Okay, and let me come in here, and I might sketch just what might look like a couple houses. So I have this line right here, which is going to be sort of like a sidewalk line. It's receding in here. Okay. Now what I want to do is, I'm even going to, my grid was a little off from when I drew it, but that's okay. So I might have a little bit of a front yard, and then about to right here, and then from here to here, I'm going to start to have a house. So I'm going to see if I can't just come in here and sketch up just a small little cube shape here. This, and it's sort of landing right about the horizon line, which is okay for right now. So that might be a little bit of my house here. Okay, and then I might even have that yard might go and end about, let's say, right here. And then I might even see, if I come back over here, just drawing through right here, I might have another house that starts about right here. And it goes up a little bit, like so. It's about there and there. Another front facade. And then I could just add on something real quick to this house, make it a little bit different. Maybe there's another roof back in here. Maybe there's a little bit of chimney. Sometimes I rough stuff in and I don't have to know the exact perspective, because those are like little details I can put on later. And then maybe there's a front side entrance to this house. We might not, it's like just like a little front door like this in the back here. There we go. So that's sort of my house shape there. Now I have something here on the front, but now it's sort of hitting a tangency right there. So I'll go in and adjust that in just a minute. But I was imagining there'd be a sign or a building or something in the front here. Let me come over here, and now I'm going to map out from this particular point of view another sort of street coming in this way. Let me come in here. That's going to be sort of like my sidewalk. And then I can figure out like, hey, maybe there's a little bit of a yard space there, and right about here coming up, I'm going to have another house here. Okay? So again, just start with simple blocky shapes. Don't get too hardcore right now, and just make sure you're figuring out your perspective. If you're drawing over and you have to erase some lines, that's totally fine. Okay? You know what? I was imagining this is maybe a little bit lower. Like that could be part of a lower house line. Okay, and then maybe there's like from this end here, maybe there's like a garage attached right here. So I'm just going to draw this sort of going off this way. Okay. Oops. Like so. Okay, and then maybe this is like the house. I don't know. Maybe it has a larger garage here or whatever. I could come in here, just rough in. Maybe there's like a loose window or something. Maybe there's something in the back. We're not going to see all of that. I might reframe part of my composition just a little bit here. Maybe that comes out and there's like a little bit of a driveway here or something, and then the street goes down, and then next door might have another house. Now I can't really see it here, but I'm going to sketch it in anyway because it might end up reframing. So if I come back over here and think like, hey, that could be a little bit of yard, and now I might have another house that starts right over here. And it might be back a little bit more, but it might have an angled roof like so. See that back over here. You know what? Let me adjust that roof. I made it really huge right there. It doesn't need to be that big. Okay, let's just try something about there. And then maybe this house, maybe it has an adjoining section right here with another little roof that goes up. And then it drops back a little bit, comes back down about there, let's say. Okay, so if I stop right here and then I sort of, let me lighten up, let's go to my layers real quick. There's my key drawing. I can lighten a little bit more of the, let's see what's on it. Oh, that's our frame. Let me label that real quick so we can adjust that and move it around. Talk about strengthening our composition. Okay, so right here I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna start to drop this down a little bit more because now I don't want the grid to be too overbearing. And now I'm looking at my piece here and see I'm starting to get a composition that comes out of this. I have a couple houses on the right here. I'm getting a building back here. Now the couple of areas that I haven't addressed is like what is in around this side right here. And so I'm going to come in there and start to do that. And then I might also see further back it's going to be a lot smaller. I can have other houses in the back here. Okay, that's going to help. And then right here I have this giant nasty factory, like in the middle. This is like, what was the company that just moved? It was in Arundel. It's my favorite hot sauce.
Sriracha.
Yeah, the Sriracha plant was in Arundel, and it was something just like this. It was like this big giant plant that made the Sriracha hot sauce in Arundel. And they had to leave because the city forced them out because all the neighbors, so all surrounding the plant were neighborhoods, were complaining about like people couldn't walk their dogs because there was like this red mist in the air, which was from like them making the hot sauce, and people were like couldn't breathe. They're like, I can't breathe. It like hurts. It's hot, and that was all the leftover, you know, from cooking up their little hot sauce recipe. Okay. So here, what I like to do, a really powerful use is just using lines to indicate like streets. So if I bring a line down that way and then curve it, and then if I come back over here and I'm gonna just sort of wrap a line that comes back this way. So that's sort of a street. So now if I put another line in the back here, like that, and put just another little line for like a sidewalk here, and then another for like where the yard would be. That could be the curve, and then I could have another series of houses back there around this plant right now. So let's come over, let's do that. Let's throw a couple houses in there. I'm going to start one just right here. I'm just going to sort of come up a little bit. And I can tell by the scale, if I had to, I could get in there right now and transfer scale around, right? That's going to be pretty important that I make sure I get that house correctly. So let's do that really quick. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to create a layer. I'm going to call this my scale layer. That way I can figure out exactly what I have. I'm going to switch to red right now. And I'm going to look at the height of an individual here off of my vanishing point. So with this house, I could tell that somebody standing out here is probably going to be about that tall, right? That's about garage height. So let me see if I can transfer that individual over real fast. Going to be about that tall there. I'm going to come over here. Let's bring them forward. Okay, and look, when I bring them all the way up to right here, to the edge of this house, they're about that tall too, which isn't bad. I could raise that a little bit more. That could be a little bit taller. And then when I come over here, let's receive that. Let me find out exactly how tall they are back there. And depending on the style of the show, sometimes you can get away with them not being like incredibly accurate. But right here, they're about that tall, so I know about right there on that line, this individual is roughly about that big. Okay, does that make sense how I did that? Got my scale there, my scale here, now my scale right there. So I was actually pretty close with what I was sensing. When I come back, let me go back to layer 3 here. So when I come back over here, and I was imagining a house to be about yay tall, about that big, going down. Okay, and then if I just recede the sides to that, that's pretty good because somebody here is about that tall right there. Okay, so that's good. That's where I wanted it to be. So there. So now I can turn off my scale. I can turn it back on when I want to check it. I realize that this is a little low now. Okay, so real quick, since I'm on this layer, what I can do is just erase this real fast. I'm going to raise the height of this a little bit more. And let's find that middle, get the center line up there. Like that, okay? So that might be, houses have different roofs, all different types of angles on them. Some are like one level, country homes, with like one big level that has two little adjustments. Some are double story, some are even like 3-story, where you have like a basement area, and then it goes up to like the main entrance and then the secondary. So you can just keep adding on. So now I'm going to come over here. Let me just add a little bit more information to this house here. All right, and let's close my window there. Let me match up my points. Here we go. So let's say there's a little bit of a front attachment here. Let's do something like that. Okay, so that's part of that house. There might even be a little bit of a, let me put a little fence line in the back behind it. And then whenever I have a fence line, I always do this. I always put trees around. Trees have lots of, houses have lots of trees around them for shade and stuff. All right, so I get that little tree in there, and it starts to feel like it's working. Now I might even come over here and cheat and just make it look like there's another house sort of in the back there, like that. So I put another little cornice. I can see that little line. You see how I did that? So just right there, now I have houses in the front. I got a building here I'm going to adjust. Let's do that really fast because I have that tangency where this right here is hitting here. So what I'm going to do is erase some of this, and maybe I'll pull it back or in the height. And let me fix part of that street. So I had the front of that house receding like that. Here was part of the street to that corner. Okay, and let me just pull this back a teeny bit more there. So it's something like that, and then this drops down like this. So I'm going to also erase the back side and just bring that shape a little bit further back. Okay, so from this point right here, I'm almost pretty much done with my understructure, right? So my understructure, I have all the shape and form that I want. Now the rest is just me going in there and putting little details. Okay. And some more of those details, well, I haven't done anything on the factory yet. I could research that, and I'll do something there in a minute that I know would be factory related. But let me finish. Let me pretend that this foreground element has, what should we do? I was thinking of one of these. Maybe this house has one of these like overhang thingies. And then we get, there was something there, but what if I come in here and I cheat and say, there's an angled roof that's going like this way. And then that comes down a little bit. And I'm going to draw just a triangle on the side of that box right there. I'm going to imagine that's like a roof line. And I'm going to come over here and draw that coming this way. So maybe this neighborhood block curves a little bit. So, okay. Oops. Put that. Sorry, my pen slipped there. Let me fix that. Go back to the vanishing point. Okay. So there's my angled house. No, if that's a roof line, let me fix this real quick. Maybe I'll just take that off. Just drop it here. Yeah, that's sort of cool because now it looks like I have, if I wanted to, I could put a dormer here. The dormer is that one of those little windows that stick out, word like this. And then that's the side. Okay, and then I have this, like I'm looking on this garage right here. And if I wanted to, to make it, maybe it's not even a garage, maybe it's still a, so if I come in here, I could put like a little chimney if I want. And then angle it off a little bit. Up there. And let me get the top part. There. So that's part of my chimney. I got the little side roof here. Drops down. So I basically have all the elements that I need now to keep moving forward. So let me bring the street out a little bit more. What if that's not a street? What if it's in, I was thinking it could be an alleyway, but I don't need an alleyway, right? Stick with what I need. Okay, so that's it. That's my core under. Now, how do I make that look like a factory? When we think of factories, what other shapes can I add in there that would make it feel like totally different or out of place? Right now I have pretty much like a neighborhood that's taking place. So if I wanted to add a little bit more to that, factories can have like rounded tops, big windows, right? So I might need to raise the top of that. Factories also have pipes.
Like the ventilation?
Ventilation, tons of pipes and exhaust, chimneys, all that type of stuff. So maybe I make this look like there's a, let me come over here. Real quick, I was going to check my scale again because I haven't looked at it for a couple minutes. So let's do that real quick. Check your scale. So someone there is about that tall, right? Let's turn that, oops, turn scale off. Okay, so now I can come back here to my under sketch, and I know that like if I had a door, like for a semi or something, it might be about yay big. And that's even a little bit wider. I could have chopped it off a little bit more. And so let's just see if I can do, maybe I'd put a little thing here. And then something that I always like doing with factories, because when I was living in Chicago, they always had these like weird looking rooftops. So if I cross this guy off real quick, find the middle, and I come in here and put in a part of an arch in there. I got to be careful because I'm going to end up with the Justice Hall of Fame if I don't watch what I'm doing, right? But that's okay. I'll add to it in just a second here, okay? Because that's exactly. Do you remember the Justice Hall of Fame? It was like this round building like that. But then what I'm going to do now, I need to figure out where that line ends, right? So what I do is this is where I draw through my shape. That's why I like to draw on the ground. I figured there. That's the back side. If I come up to here, okay, and found that side, let me find the other side. Bring that to this corner, come up to right there. So from here to here is that next square that's in there like that. So it's going to come in and that arch is going to be somewhere about right there. And I had to do all that just to figure that little line. I had to draw through, find the back side to get that curve in there. That's okay. There. So now I have the top, and now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put some giant smokestacks coming off, right? So I'm going to divide this. I'm looking underneath it. I'm going to divide that into like a couple equal parts. I'm going to put a nice ellipse in both of these, sort of recede it back here. And then I'm going to come here and just raise that out and put a smokestack here. Draw underneath that. Come back over here, put the other smokestack. That should be the height of them all. And I'm just doing this. You don't have to do smokestacks. Actually, I'm worried some of you guys, I'm putting in ellipses that I already understand. There we go. Okay, so that might be some smokestacks coming up, and then this side might have, what could I put here? Maybe this continues forward like this. And then this side has a little bit, maybe this comes up a little bit and has like a small roof attached to it that curves a little, like so. And then, just because I like multiple layers, let me put another edge in here. So this will really make it look like a factory, because I'm going to put those factory windows on it. And then here, let's put the windows right here. This is why we have zoning through cities, because you're only allowed to put buildings like this in certain places. You come in here, just put a couple lines in, like so. All right, so there's the start of part of my factory, and I might just add some little details, like if I come over here, make it look like there's a little pipe that comes up here, and then right here there's like a larger little smokestack. This thing comes down here. There's a little gizmo there. Maybe this stack that's right up here has something that's in front of it like this. These are little details that start to get it to read, you know. Maybe this has something that comes off and it overlaps. That's where they keep all the chemical carcinogens, who knows, right? So, taking a look at what I have now, I have sort of that factory feel, right? I have a rough factory. I still have a building shape. I could define it a little bit more. I could put an entryway there. I could put a little sign on it. I wouldn't get carried into the sign, though, because that means you have to letter it, and it just doesn't really look right sometimes. But I can just keep coming through here and then adding on little increments. I might have just one little small front door over here somewhere. Maybe there's a couple of them like that. And maybe there's like a little overhang in there. Okay? So I keep building from this. All I have right now is the structure, right? It's the foundation. I just have the simple square blocks and shapes. That's it. I don't need anything more complicated than that. Everything else from this point on is going to be me adding in other elements to enhance my composition. So, real quick, because before I let you guys draw, I'm just going to let you work on this, let's just briefly talk about some other elements that are simple shapes that I can put in there. I can put little details that might indicate, you know, height and scale and size relationships. So this is in 2-point perspective right now, but some of those other little details might be, they can be trees, right?
We can put solar panels.
Okay.
On
Oh, you know what? I could just keep making this thing get more and more giant.
You're gonna keep raising it.
I could just keep raising it, and then maybe over here, I just thought I need to have a big chimney with smoke billowing out too.
You're gonna end up making the sun palace.
And then it goes up and it gets a little
That's what he's gonna end
thinner.
up making the sun palace.
That's like this, whatever, right? And you just keep adding, and then you did say solar panels, right?
Yeah.
All these other, so there might be like solar panels up here. You know, it'd be funny. This is a chicken plant,
It looks like it.
and this is where like they bring all the chickens in. Oops. And they kill the chickens to make chicken sandwiches. You know. There we go. Okay, so I just keep adding onto it. So other little elements that I was just talking about before I was thinking of the solar panel and that little chimney there, right? Here's one right here, right? This is a street sidewalk that I was sketching right here. So I come over here and I can draw the little lines coming across for like the concrete. Now this is key right here. Look, I come over here and I do this.
It's a pole.
And I put a little pole and a little street sign. That's huge. That instantly indicates some scale and height relationships there. If I did that there, what else might I have? I come over here,
Well, if you do that, don't you?
street lights.
Fire hydrant.
So hold on, I'm going to move this over a little bit because I realize I'm starting to hit tangency there.
Wouldn't you have to make the garage door bigger?
Where?
On the warehouse, the garage door.
Over there? Yeah, I could probably raise it a little bit, but you got to look at the scale of the. I might have made that street sign a little bit too big.
Sidewalk looks a little.
Yeah, it's a little tall there. I could bring it down. Maybe it's a double street sign. Sometimes they're actually, street signs can be pretty tall because you're supposed to be able to see them from inside your car. So let's do that. And then I was going to come over right here. Let me just put a little circle there. And then I'm going to come up here and put one of these guys over right here. And I'm going to make that into a little light.
That's beautiful.
Okay, so once I get that light there, let's transfer the scale of that light. And bring it over here. I'm going to put it right about there. Let's bring the height of that. It's going to be about right there. So it hit the ground, it was about here. Now if I bring that line straight up, like so. Okay, let me find out where the arch was there. Arch started right here. So I'm comparing these 2 points from there to there. and then the arch ends about there and about here, and then I could just sort of look at how it arched forward, put another sketch in here. Okay, there we go. So there's another street light there. I can draw another street light in front of me. So there's all these little bits of detail that I can start to put in. I haven't even got to the roof detail yet or any of that stuff. I might angle this up a little bit more because it was a little bit flatter, and now I like it being a little bit more like that. I might bring this down. This house might be like so. And then let me fix this here. Maybe this has another roof that's like this. And this is where I have to draw through the shape to find this other side, right? Because I want to, let me erase some of that. It's getting a little muddy in there. Okay, 1 second. There. So what I was doing is drawing through the base of that shape. Okay. That way, if I figure out, I want to figure out a roof line for that. So if I come in here and go this way, now I can come over here 1 second. Say about there. See that back up to here. There we go. There's my center. I'll go down to about right there. Okay? And I can just draw a line across here. So I got that roof line in there. Oops, that was a crooked line. Like so. Okay, so I just keep making these little adjustments. Keep sketching, adding in some details. So I put trees in the back there, right? So why I can do that here. So let's pretend right here between this house and then this sidewalk comes this way, right? So maybe the sidewalk, it comes like this, and then it starts here. So this is yard on the guy's house. That's part of his driveway, right? So this is yard here, and then here's part of the sidewalk. So you watch the sidewalk do this, it comes around the turn, and then it starts to recede back a little bit. So I could come in here, and I'm going to put a big giant tree. I'm just going to draw the base of the tree, and I'm going to work my way upward, right? I'm just going to come up here, and I'm going to draw a squashed cylinder, like that. And then what do I know about a tree? It's half of a sphere. So if I just dot that in the middle and just sort of go out in multiple directions and get half of a sphere in there, and then if I just go upwards from there, okay, that's the basics of my tree, and then I can come in and erase this overlap area in here. And then if I erase where it's overlapping there, now I have a little bit of a tree in my front. In fact, if I had that there, I could come over here and get really touchy and be like, okay, if there's one there, and then this comes up, Phil could come in here and say, hey, there's another tree. Uh-oh, hardcore perspective, man. Trees, right? Maybe that base is something like that. Now, I like to always draw a pass because if I reframe, that's something else I can put in. Now I could come back here and erase this. Now what's important about trees is I still want to treat this as if I could wrap it, oops, with rubber bands. So I like to wrap the form a little bit like this. Sort of draw through and figure out. That way, when I go in there and I start to put some like little leaf detail, I'm going to mimic the form that's happening. So I can come in here and do this type of thing. See that? And then I'm going to wrap those around the lines because I want to make sure that that's going to give the tree a little bit more mass and shape. Does that sort of make sense? Basic contour line. So by doing that, and then I could add little details like, yes, there might be a branch here. Maybe there's a tire hanging on it, right? A couple little leaves down below.
Such a nice neighborhood till the chicken farm came.
I know, right? Or we could put Costco up there. That's like the neighborhood Costco, you know. So it's
City of Costco.
just kidding. I like Costco.
It looks more like a Walmart.
Costco's my favorite store of all times
It's more a
because they
Walmart.
get free samples.
Yeah,
They sell computer games, electronics, and they even have a gas station in most of them. To save money. So there, I put a tree in. Now, what's really important about what I'm doing here is I'm starting with shapes, right? Just overlapping shapes. But in the back of my mind, I am sort of thinking about foreground, midground, okay, background. So I didn't mention it when I was doing the demo, but let me just draw on top of this and show you what I did on purpose. Okay, first off, as I started with this, right? Started with my frame that I had right in here. Okay, after I got my frame in, what's the first thing I did after I got that horizon line and the grid in? I got this in, and then once I got a rough grid in there, the first thing I did is I came in and I drew a shape right here on purpose. And then I brought that shape up because I wanted to get that feeling of something being right, smack dab in my foreground. After I did that, what's the next thing that I did? I drew this shape right here. Because that's sort of in my midground towards my background, right? After I did that shape, then I came over and I drew another shape here. So what I'm getting at is I sort of did this on purpose. I'm blocking out my foreground, midground, and background as I'm working, okay? So and I didn't mention that when I was drawing, but I had my foreground here. So now when we go take a look, and if I were to wrap this with silhouette lines, this right here, folks, is now my foreground. All that right there. This is my foreground right here, okay? And so can you imagine this shaded? Okay, if I were to come in here, let's just do it real quick. I have it on a separate layer. Let's grab a magic airbrush tool and let me come in here real quick. Let's go to like 20% grade. So later on, if I got into lighting, I could really think about this. You see how my foreground now is all separate? See how that works in my composition? Okay, so now I have all of this back here, the building and this area right here. Let me go over it in green. There we go. So give me a second. Let me erase the red so it's a little bit easier to see. Okay. All right, so let's go back into, I'm on some weird, my brush here. Let me change real quick. Oops, not you. Come on, change again. There we go. So everything from here right now. This is all my midground area in here, right? The factory. That's all midground. And then, if I were to just change another color, let's go to yellow. Everything that I draw in the back here is going to be background. Okay? So let's talk about some do's and don'ts that I don't want to do. Okay? My most interesting silhouette shape in my composition is where my eye's going to go. That right now is my factory, right? Right. Okay. So when I look back here in the background where these houses are, I don't want to come in here and do this and have a house and like tons of lines, because then I'm going to make a really interesting silhouette shape if it gets too big or too large of an item. Okay. All right. Let me turn that off. We'll go back. All right. To sketching. What I do want to do is, there's one thing I haven't shown you guys yet, and let me add just every now and then I like to break that line a little bit in here. I didn't put anything over here, so let me just carry this street over. Let me just finish part of the background here. Just pretend that's the part of the street. There might be another house. It's sort of like right sitting here. That's going to see back. Hold on a second. And then sometimes I just like to throw in like a nice, maybe there's a larger tree in the back there, like that or something. Okay. I could get really touchy and maybe I could say like, hey, there's a telephone pole here. And there's another pole over here. And I could link a wire to it like this. These little stuff like that. Whatever you want, I can just keep adding little bits in there. Actually, I don't want to do the telephone poles right now because it'll make it too busy. It could still work though. But what I wanted to talk about next is I pretty much have a foreground, a midground, and background. I haven't even gotten to putting detail on it yet. But there's one thing that I haven't addressed. And that's what we started with what we call a ground plane, but there's also a sky plane, okay? So if I come back over here, and where was my perspective sketch? There it is. So watch, I'm going to come back over here right now on this layer, and I'm going to lightly do this. So just like I have a ground plane, I also have a sky plane. And that means items that are on that grid plane that are up above, they're also going to have the illusion and will have the feel that they are receding in perspective. Let me just move that over a teeny bit. And what's really cool is you really don't notice it until you do this. Once you sketch that real light grid in there like so, then you see how it adds an instant depth to the sky there. And so that's really huge. One of the most common forgotten areas inside a piece is usually the sky. So I could use that sky to my advantage right now. And this is how I could use it. Let me come back up. I put that down on my frame. Let me go back to my drawing level. And real quick, because I haven't done this yet, let me save this demo. Save as, and let's put it as, this is our 2-point perspective neighborhood. There. Save. All right. So now this is where I can use it to my advantage. You need that grid plane to help you think, right? Look, because I know in this neighborhood, just like in Arendelle, the Warachi plant, right? I could have smoke coming out like this. And maybe the wind is blowing it back a little bit this way. See that? But then when it gets up here, I can see underneath it. See how I did that sort of like that? So now I could come back here and then imagine more smoke sort of billowing out of here. And then as the smoke sort of comes out and gets back here, I'm going to be able to see underneath some of that. Did you see how I got that direction to go and how I can get that feeling of the grid? Okay. I can also get in here. Now I can put a couple clouds if I want. Let's say right up here I decided to have like a cloud in the foreground like this. I draw the underneath part, and then I can draw on top of it. And then I might have a cloud in the back, but I know on the back now it's going to be much smaller because it's receded. Like so. So now by doing little things like this, I can really start to create a little bit more depth. In fact, look, I could come back to that tree, enlarge the shape of that tree like that. You'd be surprised how tall trees can grow. Then I can come back here and put the smaller tree in the back like that. Okay? So where that smaller tree is there, I can come back in here, and then I can sketch in like a really large tree shape right in here. See, and then I have smaller, I have larger in the foreground, and then smaller. All that's because I'm using part of this grid here. Every now and then I like to do this thing with clouds where I go like this, and I just draw like an S, because then I can come in here and imagine the cloud being larger in front of me. And then as it sort of wisps around like this, and then the cloud as it gets back here, it's a little bit smaller, like that. That also creates a lot of depth. So do you see how instantly now I have a lot more depth up in that sky plane because I just started to sketch a little bit up here and add that in. So now I get a composition that really starts to work. And you know what? I made this a little bit busy. I have a ton of cloud shapes in there. That's fine. I could just come in here and I could just, let's say, decide to erase this one here and take that guy out. Just leave a couple simple clouds in like that. Okay? So I have enough happening in there right now. One thing I haven't showed you is I haven't done any detail on the houses or anything. I don't know if that's an old neighborhood in LA, or perhaps it's a city in the middle of the Midwest that has a different type of building design, or made like a lot more chimneys made out of natural stone and different types of architecture. So I could go in there and apply any detail from that point forward. And then I could also make decisions. I might decide like, you know what, that tree I put in here, I don't like having two of them. So maybe I want to take this tree out right here. And I might just make this be the more larger shape in the front. And then I'm just going to have this be just a normal street and sidewalk. And then I'm going to bring that pole back down, and then maybe I'm just going to have some cars and sitting over there, type of thing. Okay. So you get into your pieces and you really start sort of redesigning them, making little changes. But before you can even get to any of that, you have to have that straight perspective working. And so look, I took out that tree. Now I might decide to come in here and be like, hey, it's going to be a car here. So I'll try to sketch like a little box shape. Then I could come back and decide if that's too small, check my scale, make it, well, maybe there's like a car there and then there's like a moving van here, you know. Just rough it in real fast, something like that, right? And, you know, you just keep drawing, you just keep building up. But everything starts with chord shapes, simple shapes, build up. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up right here. And I'm not going to go in and put the detail on it. I just want to show you the basics, how to rough and how to think about it. So if I wanted to from here, I could go back in and do another if I like. Okay, and do these like little comps and sort of figure out your composition. All right, let me stop the recorder really quick. Let's come up here and say stop.